Let me start recording and share my screen. So I hope you can all see the screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, Doctor, we can.
Okay, so we want to touch on two sessions today. We're going to look at a little bit of stakeholders, then looking at the professionalism of ICT. Now, when we closed off last week, we had hinted on stakeholders. And I remember there was a question from one of the members on the issue of what is the difference, or touching on what is the difference between a stakeholder analysis and change management. And both are important, both are part and parcel. If you're to manage your stakeholders, stakeholders can be managed using change management, and stakeholder analysis helps you to understand exactly who might be affected and in what way by the changes you're making, and know how to manage them effectively. So the two are extremely important when we are carrying out design and implementation of anything new, a new system for our organizations. So today we want to focus on stakeholders in session 4 and session 5, and to see how we manage them as ICT professionals. So we want to understand who the stakeholders are and the power they hold over any change that we may want to make within our contexts. So we want to understand who the stakeholders are, the different categories, and how should we identify them? Not only just identify them, but have a profile of each of these stakeholders to understand their strategic significance to the organization. We want to be able to identify their needs. Why? Because these systems are for the stakeholders. They are not for the ICT, they are for stakeholders. So we need to be able to identify their needs and requirements. So who is a stakeholder? Basically, it's anybody who has an interest in the business. Anyone who has an interest in the business. If I look at where I am right now, I am a farmer. I am the owner. But the employee is also a person with interest, because he or she depends on the revenues that are generated by the farm. The neighbor who supplies goods to employees also has an interest. So if the neighbor sees my entity is moving forward, he or she knows that my employee will always have cash to come and give him or her business. So everyone has an interest. The person who supplies farmer inputs also has an interest. The factories that receive green leaf have an interest. So you have different stakeholders in any entity, and they have an interest in the organization. So therefore, anything that's coming in to disrupt, either in a positive way or in a positive or negative way, the stakeholders have an interest, and they will have an impact on whether that thing succeeds or not. Now, these stakeholders can either be internal, external. Yeah, they can be either internal or external, and they may include any of these, but we're going to see this in detail in the next slides. So here we have a listing of some stakeholders. And the first four pinpoint the internal stakeholders. So the first being the owner, then you have shareholders, managers, and then the employees. The external, as they are listed, you have your customers, suppliers, community, and government. Government is also a big stakeholder in any business. So with internal stakeholders, you have the owners and shareholders. So let's go, the managers and staff. Let's go through these one by one. So who are the owners and shareholders? These are basically the person who says this thing is mine. Yeah. Either I bought it, I established it, whatever the case, I own it. Now you have some businesses that are single owned, or maybe it's owned by one person. You have one director. Then you have those which are owned by shareholders. These shareholders could be of any number. They could be 10, they could be 20, they could be 2,000, whatever it is. Somebody who puts money, who puts capital into a business. Yeah. So these are the ones who the primary people of interest. Then you have, again, in the internal, you have management. Those in the management group, those who make decisions and plan and control what is going on. This management team, it could be an individual or it could be a team. They report to the owners. So they run the business on behalf of the owners or shareholders. We have employees and staff. These are the ones who carry out the daily activities, the operations of the organization. They maintain certain hours, and in return, they are given a wage. And they are hired because of their skills and qualifications and experience. We come to the external. You have the customers. These are the people who are in need of what you're providing, what the organization provides. So these are the ones who come to purchase your goods or services. It could be an individual or another business. It is also important we understand the needs of the customers. What is their primary need? Whatever it is you want to, the system you may want to introduce, or that the business has an interest of introducing, if it is going to disrupt negatively the customer, you may end up losing business. So it's also important to understand what their needs are, what's their primary need, why they come to you in the first place. You have the suppliers, those who provide resources to the organization. They may provide resources or services. So normally, the businesses may try their level best to maintain relationships with suppliers. Now, it's not always about money. It's always about smooth running of a business. When you have a supplier who provides you with good services on time, you have a good working relationship, you want to maintain that. So you don't want anything to disrupt a relationship. Okay, you don't want that relationship to be disrupted. So it's always important to understand those relationships. For me, again, is also this side, and I have appreciated my time this side to see how, especially for me who's in the tea sector. As some of you may know, the tea sector has been in a crisis since 2023. So all the stakeholders, all the players have basically suffered. The farmer, the factories, those who transport tea, made teas, the brokers in Mombasa, everyone has been affected. And we all feel it. We all feel it one way or the other. Even though it's trying to be revived, you feel it that every stakeholder is affected. Now, the importance of keeping good relations is extremely important. I've seen this especially here. Because of the crisis, you find you're in areas, factories in areas has not paid suppliers, has not paid service providers in a long time. And this is the time people take advantage. Those who may want to be a little bit greedy, may not sympathize, will take advantage, and they'll take you to court. You know, things like that. When you're limping, literally limping, others are literally crawling or even almost dead in ICU. You see that those who will take you to court without even blinking. But then again, you see that the importance of maintaining relationships. I've also observed where a supplier remains patient through constant communication. You're telling them, oh, please be patient with us. You see the crisis. And the supplier actually listens and is patient. That relationship, maintaining a relationship. So it is extremely important in business that even as IT professionals, we have all these things at the back of our minds as we are implementing these systems. It's not just about hitting a mark, but understanding each and every relationship that is concerned within the business, that it is actually organic. And whatever is coming may not be a terrible, this does not bring too much disruption. Then you have the community. Yeah. So everything comes from the community. Your customers come from the community. Your service providers come from the community. Your employees come from the community. Everything comes from the community, especially the local community. So it is important that there is also a consideration of the community. Yeah. So at this point, I want to introduce you to a framework, CATWAR. If anyone has time, you can just quickly Google it. This is a framework that was introduced by Peter Checkland as part of his software systems methodology. Yeah. So the objective of this framework is to guide one in business analysis and decision making, especially for stakeholder analysis. So the 6 letters stand for customers, actors, transformation process, worldview, owners, and environmental constraints. So it is basically a form of, it is basically a framework that allows management to look before you act. First, analyze the environment before you act. And this feeds very well to change management, lets you know where the most resistance may come from. So customers or clients are those stakeholders who are users of a system or a process. Yeah. Remember, like we said, the customers or your clients are those who come to buy your goods and services. The first question you might want to ask is, what is their primary need? So some questions that may guide you as you carry out the analysis is, who is on the receiving end? So who is on the receiving end begs the question of, do you have a profile of your clients? Who are they? Who are your clients? I remember I gave you a scenario that we experienced with one of our factories here when I think it was MTN made changes on money transfers. I think maybe it could be by law. I don't know what is it that is causing it. Where they do not want, if let's say I'm sending money, I don't know if some of you have experienced this. If you go to a mobile money agent and you say, I have cash here, I want you to put it on so and so's phone. And they tell you, no, I'm putting it on your phone and you send it to that person. Almost as if they want complete transparency between the source of the funds and the receiver. It's as if those laws are changing. So when this was done, now if you come this side, where you have a big number of people that do not use the traditional banking systems, that means that I receive my pay through a bank account, traditional bank like Centenary, Stanbic, DFCU, that kind of thing. Majority, if they don't receive cash, and here it's very common to see it, those who are paid by cash. There are those who don't even use mobile money. Then those who upgrade a little bit further use mobile money. Now, when this change happened, the normal agents that were being used had to be switched. So even staff members. So I remember at a certain point, one of these factories had to call one of the banks to come quickly and open accounts for those employees who were unbanked or were not affiliated to any particular bank. So in that case, you're seeing who your customer is. Yeah, to have a clear understanding of who your customer is. If you're getting any kind of system, you want to use this kind of system, who are your customers? Have a profile of them. What problem do they have now? What problem do they have now? You may notice that they may not have a problem with your product or service, but they may have a problem right now which you could use to entice them to the system. Will the system help them resolve or assist in this problem? How will they react to what we are proposing? Who are the likely winners and losers? Second, we have the actors. These are the ones involved in the implementation of changes in the system or the process. So the actors may be permanent, they may be short, mid-term or short term, whatever they may be. Are these people who are just coming to do this thing, to carry out the change and go away? If these are really target workers, someone who's just coming to install the new system or the new process and then goes away, they may leave you with a problem. What is their motivation? To simply fulfill their objective and then go away. Somebody who is an actor who is long term is interested in the survival of this new system or setup or process. They're interested in the survival, not just hitting a milestone and going away. So what would be the likely impact of the change on them? How may they react to this change? So these are the actors. Transformation. The transformation are the actual changes that will happen. So here ask questions like, what is the process for transforming inputs into outputs? What are the inputs? Where do they come from? What are the outputs? Where do they go? What are all the steps required in between? Okay, that helps you and come analyze that. Then you have the world view. So the world view is the bigger picture, the impact of the transformed process or the system. What will this impact have on the world view? How does this bigger picture how will it come out? Questions to guide us. What is the bigger picture into which the situation fits? Why really do we want this thing? What change are we, how we expected to change the world we are currently living in, or the scenario we are currently living in, or the context? What change are we actually aiming for? What is the real problem we're working on? It is always important to keep in mind the real problem, the real problem that we are trying to tackle. That what is the wider impact of any solution? Owners, these are the decision makers. Yeah, those who have authority to make the change, those who have the ability to make it move ahead or to stop it. Will these people help or stop you? What would cause them to get in your way? What would lead them to help you? What is the primary objective of the stakeholders? What is it that they wish to see? One of the things I've noticed that the more the owners or shareholders, the more difficult it is to get a consensus. Everyone has their own mindset and their own objectives. Environmental constraints. So we have external constraints and limitations. And these could be ethical limits, regulatory frameworks, constraints, financial constraints, resource limitations, limitations for project scope, limits set by terms of reference, and so on and so forth. So here are questions that would guide you. What are the broader constraints that act on the situation and your ideas? What are the ethical limitations? All these limitations, list them out. How may this constraint, how may this constraint your solution? How may they constrain your solution? How can you get around them? To put this into practice, in your own time, try and put this method to the transformation you have suggested for Aristoc booklets. Yeah, that assignment you've done as a group. In your own time, you can do that. Do you have any questions so far before we move to the next session?
Doctor, I have a question.
Yes, please.
I'm failing to, you had mentioned that the framework, catwalk, I'm failing to understand does it majorly apply with IT systems? Was it made specifically for assessing, doing business analysis against information systems or IT systems? I missed a point there.
I believe it can be used for anything, but the person who developed it specifically for soft systems methodology. Yeah, but somebody else can use it in another context.
So soft systems methodology is another word for
It's
IT systems?
Yeah, it's also basically a methodology developed for IS in the
Okay.
IS field.
Okay.
Yes. So but this framework specifically helps us to do a stakeholder analysis.
Okay, so basically before any system, or this would apply very well with the change management as well,
Yes,
to be
please.
used as a checker.
Yes, please. So remember, like we said, the stakeholder analysis goes hand in hand with change management.
Okay,
Before you do
thank
the
you.
change management, you need to have a clear understanding of who your stakeholders are so that you can manage these changes effectively. So basically, the stakeholder analysis helps you, and it's profiling for you the stakeholders and where their needs may lie, where there may be resistance, where you need to put more work than another.
Maybe another question, Doctor, before we move on.
Yes, please.
When the IT strategy is being laid out,
Yes.
and you decide maybe the applications will be hosted in the cloud and all, the drive, which is maybe the 3 to 5 year plan.
Mm.
And all these are documented and approved.
Mm.
But at the point of implementation, you're okay. At the point of writing out the IT strategy, possibly this framework was not followed.
Mm-hmm.
Then I see a showstopper at the point of implementation, whereby there is an item that was listed in the IT strategy in the beginning, but there
Yes.
was no consideration of the impact that possibly it could have on the worldview, the owners, and the customers.
Yes.
How does the organization then harmonize what's in the IT strategy at that moment? Because they're looking at achieving, but
Yes.
then consideration of the impact is sort of the two are not in
The
sync.
two are not
How
in
would you
sync.
handle?
Now I think this is where we understand that the strategy is a living document, meaning it also evolves. Yeah, the strategy itself will evolve, will change along the way. If this is something that does not gel with the stakeholders, or that will have an automatic mismatch, then there must be a change in that part of the strategy. That's why we say that strategy is a living document. It's being evaluated along the way. Along the way, if you find this thing is not compatible, then that can be replaced with something else, as long as it helps you attain the overall objective. Remember, Triza, that the objective of ICT strategy is not that you have implemented the system. No, that you've implemented a system that helps you achieve the overall organizational goal. Yeah, it's the overall organizational goal that is important to achieve, not the ICT objective. The ICT objective is to ensure what can ICT introduce to help achieve the overall organizational goal. If we introduce something that is not going to help us achieve that goal, then that thing is useless to the organization. So take an example. If you had said we want to do cloud computing, and you have customers who don't have access to cloud computing, so what would be the point of cloud computing? What would be the point of it? So it is to have it is to ensure that let us say the first question would be in your strategy. Why would maybe I would have better phrased it this way rather than say, let's have cloud computing. In the strategy, it would be better if I stated to have affordable and accessible should I say online ICT services for our customers, for the organization, let's say for the organization. What that may be, whether it's we're going to use cloud services or we're going to host something ourselves or whatever it is, it should be affordable and accessible. It should be affordable and accessible for everyone in the organization. So in that time, what that means, as if that is your strategy, then the objective now in your design is to find something that is affordable for the organization, plus as well as giving this service to all your customers, whether it is via the mobile phone, whether it is using any smart device, and where your system is hosted, it's up to you what is affordable to you. So the point is to, in your strategy, to say that it is affordable and it is accessible. So what then that is, you design according to what is affordable and accessible for all stakeholders. I don't know if, Teresa, I answer your question.
Yes, doctor, you do.
Okay.
That is clear.
Any other question or comment? If no, let's move to our next session. This is just completing still a little bit on stakeholders and then moving on to the professionalism of ICT. Okay, we're continuing on with our distributed ownership responsibilities, and we shall narrow down to the IT profession and the ethical requirements attached to it. So let's first continue a little bit with our stakeholder analysis. What is a stakeholder analysis? So it is basically we, the IT professionals, trying to gather information on the interested parties, the interested parties in the organization, and how we may try to implement a new system, policy, or process. So here we are trying to identify those people who we must win over so that this project may be successful. So in the analysis, we are looking for things like knowledge. What is the knowledge of the stakeholder? What is their interests, position for or against? Then potential alliances with other stakeholders. And then what kind of power do each of these people hold? Yeah. I remember earlier this last year, I think it started 2024. Well, again at the factory which I'm attached to, a decision had to be made on whether we sell a factory asset, to recapitalize the factory, or we don't sell. So it seemed like a very, very easy thing to do, because we're basically saying we're in a tea crisis, the factory has a lot of mabanja and so on and so forth, and we really need to sell something so that we can recapitalize and then take care of our creditors, the banks, the farmers themselves, the shareholders, and so on and so forth. But it was also very political, because we were talking about selling an asset that was owned by the factory that at one point had promised farmers that were close to that asset that they would put up a factory close to them and they wouldn't have to incur so much transport costs moving their green leaf to a factory. So even before we started the meeting, as I remember, I was seated there, and then someone just served me with papers that there's a petition to know us we are not selling. So there we were stuck. Just before the meeting, the AGM, as board members were saying, now what are we going to do? So until one person said, no, let's pull out our biggest shareholder, who has veto power, who can come in and that big person, big shareholder, we say that if the worst comes to the worst, we're going to vote and we need you to come in and vote. So that was seeking for power, a person who can overturn all others and say, no, this thing is it. So that the power, and this person with power could be anyone, absolutely anyone. So the point is to know who the key players are, those who have the highest interest, and then those with the power to make or break. So that analysis is to be able to prioritize between those key stakeholders. So like all the things we have talked about, all of it needs planning as well. Yeah. The stakeholder analysis requires planning. So in this, we start by defining the purpose of the analysis. Why are we doing this analysis? Identify the potential users of the information, devise a plan for using the information. Then you train a small working group. Train a small working group. So this working group should have members who are going to interview and carry out analysis of the stakeholder. They're going to carry out analysis of the different stakeholders. Members of this group then should represent the distinct interests and organizational units, because these ones will then identify the different stakeholders and their different points of power.
Doctor, you're breaking. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Am I clear now?
That's much better.
Okay, let's hope it stabilizes. You know, once the rainy season begins, network is not the best here. Develop a plan and timeline. Now, the working group should identify specific steps to be taken. Then the timeline should include all the major steps in the process, including the final presentation. So begin by identifying your stakeholders. Just as we pointed out, the framework we used to identify those stakeholders. Think about each of those stakeholders individually and profile them. Then develop a list of priority stakeholders with input from experience. By prioritizing them, this is what we mean. Look at the interest level. Yeah, interest level. Who has the highest interest? Who has the lowest interest? Then look at the power level of each of the stakeholders that you have listed out, from the owners, the employees and staff, you come to the external environment, do the same thing. Even an employee can also be considered someone of a great deal of power. Let me just give you an example. Here at the factory, we have employees. You have management, you have those in administration, then you have the factory workers, then you have the field workers. You cannot believe this, but a person who can very easily stop a factory from operating is the factory worker. The one who is going to lift leaf and put green leaf and put it on a conveyor belt. The one who's going to put firewood in the burner. That person can easily stop production more than the manager himself or herself, because they're the ones carrying out the everyday duty. So it is important not to underestimate anyone. Extremely important. You may focus on the owner, but you've forgotten this worker. I remember the manager of one of the factories said that the most important person is that factory worker. With the management team, we can talk to ourselves and we say, we can do without salary this month, but not that worker. Because if he or she decides to put down his or her tools, the factory will shut down. And they organize themselves in groups. So it is important to have a clear understanding of who each of your stakeholder is. And this varies according to industry. So you might even imagine in a bank, the IT person may be extremely important. Without those systems, I don't think much can move. That person may be more important than the teller. So understand your key stakeholders. Know You need to know how will they likely feel, how will they react to what you're going to do, how best to manage them, how best to engage them, how best to communicate to them. And each group has a different way it must be communicated to. So these are guiding questions. So what are the financial, emotional interests do they have in the outcome of this work, this project? What is it that motivates them? What information do they want from you? How do they want to receive this information? And so on and so forth. Yeah. So stakeholder analysis really, it's you see, it's moving away from IT. It's now people management more or less. Yeah? So why stakeholder analysis? Why is it important for ICT, any ICT design and implementation? The opinion of the most powerful person is extremely important. Their interests must be heard. Yeah, their interests must be heard. Gaining support of the most powerful stakeholder can make or break your project success. Communication, constant communication with your stakeholder. Now, remember, I gave you the example of the AGM meeting we had, and we were thinking, let's use our most powerful stakeholder. But in the end, we didn't even need to vote. Why? Well, the most important thing we had was communication. As board members, we had an objective to communicate clearly what we were doing and why. Why were we saying sell? By the time we ended the meeting, most majority said go ahead and sell. Why? Because of effective communication. When you communicate effectively, you basically get rid of any negative mindset stakeholders may have. Stakeholder review. How do we carry out a stakeholder review? We identify again our interested parties, both internal and external. External may be the donors, legislators, and so on and so forth. Consider the maturity of your organization. Consider its maturity of the organization and the influence of each stakeholder, each department, each unit. What is the knowledge of the people within the organization? Now let us look at the IT workers themselves and the professionalism they need to operate with as IT professionals. Basically, when we think about stakeholder analysis, it is about consideration of the other. It is now the IT person forgetting themselves and what they are trying to implement. You know, for IT, one of the things that is has such a very easy trigger for us is our systems. We're in love with our systems. What we want, what we know, what we have implemented, we want everyone to appreciate. It's like a mother and a wife in a home. When you cook a meal, you want your children, your husband to say, this is the best meal. Whatever the mother or the wife puts on the table, it's very nice that it is appreciated. So it's also us IT professionals, when we bring a solution on table, like any human being, you want it to be appreciated. But a stakeholder analysis is asking us to be as objective as possible. The users, what is their opinion? What do they feel about this thing? Yeah, so that requires a certain level of professionalism from the IT worker. So we want to discuss the IT workers. Who are they? You have these different categories here. Most of us are now training for this right now. Yeah, we may have been in these other professions, but we're now moving to the management side. So we are considered specialized professionals, but what about our, we are specialized in knowledge and skills, but what about our professionalism? What about our professionalism? We hear people talk about the professionalism of lawyers, doctors. There's certain code of conduct that is expected of them, certain ethical behaviors. I remember on social media there was a story of a lawyer, I think, who got involved in a divorce case, in the social media fight of a couple that was fighting in the social media space. And people said that the lawyer said this man must be disciplined. The way he got involved personally, also getting into the verbal exchange between the couple. So who is a profession? Yeah. So to be called a profession, we're looking at someone with highly specialized knowledge and long and intensive academic preparation. Yeah, long and intensive academic preparation. So most professionals are subjected to strict codes of conduct. But this is something that is sometimes forgotten for the IT professional. So why do we have those codes of conduct? Well, for legal purposes, yeah. But as we said, IT professionals most of the time are not recognized as professionals. They are not licensed like a doctor or a lawyer. We are not liable for malpractices. But IT professionals have different relationships with the different stakeholders that we've been talking about. We do actually have different relationships, but most of the time, because we are in the background, it's very easy to forget that we do have a responsibility towards each of these people. So what is ethics? So ethics, some of us have already touched on it. We have seen it. Ethics is not about anyone being a saint. No, it's about knowing what to do in different situations. What is the best way possible to handle a situation? Yeah. Any ethical dilemma. If you're found in a state of dilemma, what are the standards that I must use? What are the guidelines that I must use as a professional to handle the matter? So the IT profession is looking at, for ethics, for the IT person, we're saying, how do I carry out my duties? Because as in carrying out my duties as an IT profession, I'm interacting with others, or I'm interacting with something concerning another person, more specifically information. Now, IT professionals are not just upholding, they don't just at individual level, but the IT profession is also responsible for enforcing ICT policies. And ICT policies are nothing but actually codes of conduct. If you have an ICT policy, for example, the ICT policy will have policies concerning data privacy and protection. It will have policies concerning security, and so on and so forth. These are nothing but ethical codes of conduct at their best. Leaving that aside, in everyday dealings, we are dealing with technologies, be it in hardware part or in software. But we always have this very delicate thing called piracy. Yeah? This very delicate thing, piracy. It has a lot of ethical discussions and debates around it. But it's also an important point to always consider, because it can easily bring about professional embarrassment. Yeah. So here we see some software organizations which have created business software alliances, basically looking at the subject of software piracy. A lot of people have a lot of discussions around this, but it will not be part of a debate for this course unit, because we are looking at systems analysis and IT professionals as being ethical members of society. So moving on to still IT professionalism and employees, we moving from software piracy and so on and so forth. We also have the subject of trade secrets, but this is essentially going back to privacy, data privacy, privacy itself. So looking at the IT profession protecting the organization's secrets, that we don't have information that is not meant to be public leaking out. Now, there can be elements that we put forward to ensure, for example, the policies and systems and firewalls and so on and so forth. But again, as IT professionals, we all know that it's very possible for me, who is guarding the property, to leak it out. Yeah, it's very easy for me to do that. I don't remember if I told you a story where this happened many years ago when Airtel was still, I forget what it was at that time, when a top management person gave his laptop to IT, and they found data that was essentially very private, and these people decided to publicize it to anyone that was online in Uganda at that time. It was a source of a great deal of embarrassment, but it was one of those things where IT professional really failed in terms of ethical behavior. Yeah, so that is another area. Then we have the subject of whistleblowing. Now, this is also another ethical dilemma situation. I'm sure most of you have heard of some cases. I think there was a gentleman in the US who blew the whistle on the US government's use of people's private information, that basically the US government was collecting information from mobile phone use and anyone online, basically. It was considered unethical of him, of course, and it was against the law for him to do that. But then there were those others who argued that no, he actually did a public service by blowing the whistle on what government was doing illegally or unethically to its citizens. IT professionals are the ones who provide the clients, the employees, with IT services and hardware and so on and so forth. Yeah. So by doing this, that already creates a relationship. So if an IT profession is the one who is going to provide you with the personal computer that you use, and this person is going to provide you with access to the network and to all other resources, but even in the process is also collecting data from you. So for example, as I'm using UMU services, there's certain data the system picks from me. I may want this to be done, I may not want this to be done, I may not want it to be made public, and so on and so forth. My online activities, it's collected, the systems are collecting. And the IT staff can view what I'm doing. They can have access to what I'm doing. So that already creates a relationship between me and the IT profession. Yeah, as a user of UMU services, I already have a relationship. So the question is, how do they...
Doctor, we've lost you. We can't hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?